So this was a video I was intending to make for a while, actually. It comes from a comment by a guy called David Hallowell, who was commenting on one of my videos when I was talking about 3 notes per string scales and the underlying forms that you can find inside them. And one of the things he pointed out in the comment was that actually if you look at the cage scales, there are actually only 2 forms. There are only 2 one-octave forms that are used throughout all 5 positions. You can read the original comments in the link up there. I'll put a link, there's a thread going on around that. But anyway, when I looked, I realised he was entirely right. There are actually only 2 simple forms that you need to memorise, and once you've got that, you've got every cage scale going all the way up the neck memorised. And I thought this was really interesting and well worth sharing. It's an interesting idea as well because you can start to take these ideas and adapt them and take them in new directions. So probably I'll do that in other videos as well. But what I want to do this week is just introduce the 2 one-octave forms just so you can start to recognise them and show you how they're used in all of the 5 cage positions. So let's start by just looking at the 2 simple forms. Okay, so the first form looks like this. So it starts with my second finger on the root note and ascends to the octave with my little finger on the root note an octave above. And this form I can move around the neck, so if, for example, I'm starting on an A note here, and as that's a root note, that's saying I'm playing in A major. I could easily move it to there, and as that's a B, I must be playing in B major. Move it again, C, so I'm playing in C major. So by moving this form around, I can change the key that I'm playing in. So that's ascending up and down the frets from the low 6th string. But equally, I can move it across the strings as well. So if instead of starting from the 6th string, start from the 5th, it's the same shape. And as that defines the root note, that's a D, so I'm playing in D major. And I could play that from the 6th string just here. Same shape. Okay, and I can move it again. So there's a G note. Now, there's something strange going on here. It's something a little bit unusual. And this is because of how the guitar's tuned. So most of the strings are tuned based on 4ths, so use the 5th fret to tune for the next string, apart from going from the G to B, which is tuned to a major 3rd, so you use the 4th fret, and then E is tuned to a perfect 5th again. And what that means is when you're moving between the G to the B, you need to put a little kink in, you need to slide your hand 1 set of frets up. But that's the only rule really, and that applies no matter what shape you're using. And the same, I can start here, so that's a C, put that little kink in, and there's C major. So you can see how this one form can move to anywhere on the neck. So that's the first form to be aware of. So the second shape looks like this. So this time we're starting with the little finger and finishing with the second finger. And just like before, I can move this, so I can move this up the frets. So if I start on D, I get a D major scale. And I could have used the first shape just here. If I started with my second finger, using the first shape, but I'm using the second shape. Get the same scale. And just like before, I can move these across the strings as well. So I can start on this F. And just like before, when I'm going between the G to B strings, I need to move the scale 1 set of frets up. Okay, so that's F major. And I could start with B flat. And again, when I'm moving from G to B, one set of frets out. But again, I'm starting with my little finger, finishing with my second finger. So that's an interesting trait of these two shapes. The first shape starts with my second finger when I'm ascending and finishes with my little finger. And the second shape starts with my little finger and finishes with my second finger. So one, if you like, is the reverse of the other, and we're going to take advantage of that later. So those are the two forms, and those are the only two things you need to memorise in order to be able to play all of the cage positions going all the way up the neck. Let me demonstrate. So let's look at the E shape in detail. So this is the caged E shape. And look at where the root notes are. Can you see there's a root note just there? And it falls nicely under my second finger. So this, if you like, is the first shape. You can see straight away how that works. And actually, if you start from there, I'm on my little finger. I use the second shape. And then I'm back on my second finger again, so I could start the first shape for that final note. So can you see how this E shape is actually just those two forms, one stacked on top of another? So that's the E shape. Now there are my root notes. As you can see, one's under my second finger, one's under my little finger. So let's move my second finger up to where my little finger was just there. And as we know, when we start from here, we can use the first shape. And we're actually in the D major caged form. So if you have a look at that shape, you can see, starting from there, that first shape. And actually, if I descend from this root note, I'd use the top part of the second shape. Can you see that? And similarly, just here, I'd use the second shape if I was ascending, or part of it anyway. So these two forms give me both the E shape and the D shape. So let's do that trick again. So there are my two root notes. So I'm going to move my second finger to where my little finger was to play that upper note. Okay? And this puts me in the C caged position. So you can see as if I ascend from there, I use the first shape again. And descending, I use the second shape. And that finishes with my little finger, and I descend from there with the first shape. So again, these two root forms define the C shape as well. Okay. Let's take that idea further. So that's where my root note was, and that's where my little finger was for the root note there. And we'll slide my second finger to play that low note. And again, I can use that first shape. And this is the A cage position. And there again, I'm using that second shape. Descending down the first shape. Descending down the second shape. And again, just like before, I can move my second finger where my little finger was. And that puts me in the G shape position. Hopefully you can see that. There's the G shape, the second shape. And from there I use the first shape. So hopefully you can see that's gone through all 5 cage positions. These two shapes, just stacking them on top of each other, identifying where the root note is and deciding, okay, if it's my second finger falling on that root note, then if I ascend I use the first shape, or if I'm descending I use the second shape. And similarly, if my little finger falls on the root note, if I ascend I use the second shape, if I descend I use the first shape. So hopefully you can see, just by learning these two shapes, you can play every cage position going all the way up the neck. Now I've created a PDF of all of this, and I'll put a link in the description, so go ahead and download that if you haven't already. That has the two forms drawn out, and it's got all of the 5 cage positions just to help you start to visualize this stuff. Now these two forms are really quite useful, as hopefully I'll be able to show you in future videos. But I think these are well worth starting to recognise, and they'll certainly speed your ability to be able to build the 5 cage shapes. So thank you for your insight, David. I hope this has been a useful video for you all, and we'll chat next time. Goodbye.